Insomniac are fast becoming the standard bearers for pushing the technical aspects of the PS5 at this point, and with Spider-Man 2, it's another tour de force from a studio that have pulled from all of their previous work on the console to produce another technical showcase for Sony's machine. If we start with a comparison, you can see the differences I'm talking about. If we take a trip to the top of the Empire State Building in the original PS4 version of Spider-Man, running here on a PS5, it shows that the game was mightily impressive, but was clearly pushing the limits of the PS4 in its design. If we switch over to Miles Morales, you can see a definite improvement, but everything east of the river looks very generic due to it not being a playable area. If we flip over to Spider-Man 2, however, we can see a superb increase in not only the draw distance, but also the level of detail in the city. There are no weather effects here to mask limitations on the PS4, and even the detail in traffic is improved when you compare it to Miles' solo outing. Turning on performance mode shows a slight drop in quality on the visuals, with the AA solution that's in place giving a shimmering effect on some distant buildings with tight lines on them, which is to be expected from these settings. If we move on to the general traversal and combat, there's a huge feeling of speed that's present in the game. Particularly once you've upgraded your abilities, the pace at which you can zip around the city feels frightening at times, and this is increased massively in performance mode. My preference is usually to play in performance mode, as I prefer a higher frame rate in my games, and the effects used to enhance the feeling of speed are fantastic. If we zoom in, you can see some artifacting around the edges of whichever Spider-Man you choose to play as, particularly when you're in performance mode, but again, this is a minor quibble which doesn't really impact on anything when you're playing at such a high pace. Frame rates are up next, and Spider-Man 2 offers up the standard performance or fidelity options, along with a couple that we'll come to shortly. For the most part, we see a solid line across the frame graph. This is pretty much what we've come to expect from Insomniac at this point, and whether you're playing at 30 or 60, you'll have a decent experience here.
Now or never, Spider-Man! It's time to move!
Why won't you just give up?
Because we promised to protect this city! Don't mind me! Just stopping your guys' master plan! Got a gift for you, Spidey!
In the opening battle, there were some points that dropped a few frames in performance mode, but this didn't feel noticeable at all, and it only lasted for around a second or so. The occasional drop frame in Fidelity Mode takes it down to around 29 frames a second in certain instances, but on the whole, it's more or less locked whichever mode you decide to go with.
A normal day. Teach physics, have awkward conversations in the teacher's lounge. Everything's gonna be okay!
Much like Ratchet & Clank, however, Insomniac are allowing those with HDMI 2.1 compliant displays to go one step further. If you have a display capable of it, you can enable both VRR and 120Hz mode, which provides the option to have an enhanced frame rate in both Fidelity Mode and Performance Mode. We've discussed this before on the channel, but allowing a 40 frames a second Fidelity Mode gives a much smoother feeling game than when playing at 30, and is a great trade-off between the reduced visual quality of Performance Mode and the slower frame rate of the regular Fidelity Mode. We don't have the ability to natively capture 40 frames a second footage, so you'll have to make do with an off-screen recording, but the difference is immediately noticeable when playing in 120Hz Fidelity Mode. You can see in the on-screen display that the TV is receiving a 120Hz signal, and what this means is that every third frame of the 120 is updated, as opposed to every fourth frame when playing at 30 frames a second and every second frame at 60. Doesn't sound like a lot, but the difference is massive, especially when you're playing on a display with a pixel response time as quick as an OLED panel. What I'm basically saying here is that if you have a TV capable of 120Hz with HDMI 2.1, play this game in the Fidelity Mode with the 120Hz setting enabled, because it's fantastic. Moving on, and we come to something that raised a few eyebrows when it was announced a while back. Insomniac confirmed that ray tracing was going to be included in all modes for Spider-Man 2. I believe this is exclusively reflections, as settings such as full RT global illumination are still extremely expensive from a GPU standpoint, and reserved for those with the highest end PCs. If we take a look though, we can see that this does indeed appear to be the case. Back when the original game launched on PC, I took a look at how the reflections appeared with an RTX 3080, and the difference between screen space, cube maps and RT reflections in the world. When you see a car, for example, reflected in a pane of glass that you can't see on screen, the chances are that this is an RT reflection. And we can see here that these are indeed present. It's of a lower quality than on PC, but that's to be expected here. The telltale shimmering on the window pane is present, and there's a little bit of ghosting when it comes to the player character, as shown when we cut to this shot here of being on top of a car. However, this doesn't mean it's a poor implementation of RT, it just means that the limitations of the hardware are holding back a fully realised ray-traced world, and personally I'd rather see a machine being pushed to its limits without degrading the overall performance than a game that forces the shiny new tech while running very poorly in other areas. And let's face it, the time you're going to be spending attached to a wall, looking at cars on the street below, is probably going to be less than the footage in this video. I mentioned it in my main review, but to touch on it here as well, you're really seeing the rewards of those blazing fast SSDs in both of the new consoles. They're essentially making loading screens an almost forgotten relic at this point, and one of the things that blew me away with Miles Morales was the fast travel, allowing you to warp to a police station instantly. This has been taken a step further in Spider-Man 2, as when you complete a certain percentage of a district, you're given the ability to fast travel to any point. Holding triangle confirms the selection, and the map zooms in, dissolving into the real world in no time whatsoever, allowing you to transport yourself across the entire map in under a second or two. The same is offered when switching between Spider-Men. Swipe left on the touchpad and hold square, and after a dip to black, you're immediately in control of your partner, allowing you to continue a free roam in an instant. Gone are the days when you could make and drink a cup of coffee while travelling to a new area. There is also an exceptionally cool sequence that I'm not going to spoil, which pulls something straight out of Ratchet & Clank, to which I could only respond with, well, of course, because it made so much sense. Overall, Spider-Man 2 is another feather in Insomniac's cap when it comes to getting the most out of the PS5. Stable frame rates, a solid implementation of the full feature set on offer, and more modes and options than you can shake a stick at. There's plenty of ways to enjoy what has proven to be yet another instant classic. Just play it in the Fidelity Mode 120Hz if you can. Thank you for joining us, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, please do drop us a like down below. Leave us a comment. Let us know, are you going to be playing Spider-Man 2? Do you have the capabilities to do it in 120Hz mode? Let us know. Do you prefer performance or fidelity modes? And get subscribed to the channel, because we're going to have a load of Spider-Man 2 content coming very, very shortly. But until then, check out the review. It's linked at the top. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.